Today, let's continue our journey into the world of Marvel. Has anyone noticed how Thor came to Earth in the Avengers? Back in Thor, the first film, Loki tried to use the power of the Bifrost Bridge to destroy Jotunheim. To prevent disaster, Thor had no choice but to destroy the Bifrost Bridge, which severed Asgard's connection to the other 9 realms. Without the Bifrost, Asgard's army couldn't travel to the 9 realms to defend them, allowing rebel forces to gather and start uprisings. For example, Loki and the Chitauri's invasion of Earth was one of these rebellions. Thor came to Earth alone to capture Loki and quell the uprising, and he also planned to bring the Tesseract back to Asgard to repair the Bifrost Bridge. Many people wondered how Thor made it to Earth when the Bifrost Bridge had already been destroyed. Although the movie didn't explain this, the official Thor tie-in comic revealed that Thor was sent to Earth by Odin using dark energy. Dark energy is a powerful spell that consumes the user's life force, causing great harm to the body. That's why Odin only sent Thor alone to Earth, where he joined forces with the Avengers to defeat the Chitauri army. Thor then brought Loki back to Asgard to face Odin's judgment. Odin, heartbroken by Loki's complete lack of remorse, ordered that Loki be imprisoned for eternity. Over time, Loki couldn't handle the isolation and went mad. Although Loki was locked up, the chaos from the destruction of the Bifrost Bridge was far from over. After the Bifrost was repaired, Thor didn't immediately rush to find his girlfriend Jane on Earth. Instead, he was busy putting down rebellions in other realms.
I accept your surrender.
Odin wanted Thor to marry Sif, but Thor's heart belonged to Jane. He also asked Heimdall to keep a constant watch on Jane's whereabouts on Earth. Keep in mind, Heimdall is Sif's brother. One day, Heimdall told Thor that Jane had disappeared, which threw Thor into a panic. Ignoring all rules, Thor descended to Earth and found Jane, but Jane was perfectly fine and hadn't disappeared at all. When Thor descended to Earth, he brought the rain with him, but oddly enough, Jane remained completely dry, almost as if the rain was avoiding her. At that moment, Jane also saw the man she had been longing for and immediately slapped Thor a few times. In that instant, all their fear and anxiety disappeared, leaving only the deep longing and love they had for each other. At that moment, the police arrived to arrest Jane, claiming she had broken the law by trespassing. At that moment, a strange and powerful energy surged from Jane's body, sending all the police officers who tried to apprehend her flying. Seeing this, Thor immediately realized the seriousness of the situation and quickly took Jane to Asgard for help. However, this action provoked Odin's disapproval, as he was furious that Thor had brought a mortal into the realm of the gods without permission. But in this critical moment, the priority was to uncover the strange phenomena happening to Jane. Despite the royal physicians of Asgard using the most advanced instruments, they were still unable to discern the anomaly inside Jane. In a key moment, it was Odin, with his vast knowledge, who revealed the truth. Jane had been possessed by the Aether. He immediately brought Thor and Jane to his private study, where he explained the origins and legends of the Aether. It was said that during the time of Thor's grandfather, there was a mysterious race called the Dark Elves who sought to use the immense power of the Aether to destroy the entire universe, in order to return it to its original state of darkness. However, their plan eventually sparked a rebellion from Asgard. Under the leadership of Thor's grandfather Bor, the people of Asgard fought a brutal and grueling battle, eventually defeating the Dark Elves' army and seizing the Aether. But the Aether's power was so immense that even Bor, the king of the gods, could not destroy it entirely. To prevent it from ever falling into evil hands again, Bor had no choice but to bury it deep underground, sealing it away forever. Yet no one could have imagined that this ticking time bomb would eventually be unearthed by Jane by accident. Not long ago, Jane and her colleagues had discovered something extraordinary. They watched as a child threw an empty soda can high into the air, and to everyone's amazement, the can miraculously reappeared from above, continuing to travel back and forth through the air, as if the laws of physics had lost their hold on reality. Using her precise instruments, Jane was shocked to find that they had stumbled upon a gravitational anomaly. In this strange space, even a 2.5-ton truck could be effortlessly lifted by 2 seemingly delicate fingers, as if the whole scene were a dreamlike fantasy. While everyone was still marveling at the strange phenomenon caused by the gravitational field, Jane, driven by her curiosity to explore the unknown, navigated through the complex corridors with her equipment in hand, determined to uncover the truth behind this mysterious phenomenon. However, it seemed that fate had other plans for her. A sudden, mysterious force violently dragged Jane into a dark and eerie space. Around her were crumbling stone carvings, and the only light in this desolate place was a faint red glow seeping through the cracks in the stones, casting an ominous hue over the surroundings. Driven by instinctive curiosity, Jane mustered her courage and cautiously peered toward the source of the red glow. A mysterious energy, brimming with immense power, slowly flowed through the cracks in the stone, as if it were alive. That single glance nearly cost Jane her life. The mysterious energy surged into her body, invading her consciousness and plunging her into a deep coma. When Jane woke again, she found herself back in the familiar warehouse. From Darcy's anxious words, Jane learned even more shocking news. For Jane, it felt like only a moment had passed, but in the outside world, a full 5 hours had gone by. Faced with this sudden turn of events, a sense of foreboding crept into Odin's heart. Meanwhile, across the vast reaches of the universe, Malekith, who had been dormant for millennia, awoke as he sensed the Aether's reawakening. Malekith realized this was the perfect opportunity to reclaim control of the universe, and he quickly gathered his remaining forces to resume the plan that had failed so long ago. To infiltrate Asgard, Malekith implanted a piece of dark crystal into the body of his most loyal lieutenant, Algrim, and disguised him with a bull-headed mask. Algrim then posed as a prisoner being transported into Asgard's dungeons. Inside his cell, Algrim endured a painful transformation, eventually becoming Curse. With his immense strength and invulnerable body, he broke free from Asgard's prison, releasing all the other inmates. The goal was to create chaos in Asgard, giving them the perfect chance to steal the Aether. But Loki, imprisoned in his cell and consumed by his hatred for Odin and Thor, merely watched Curse with cold indifference. He even offered a bit of helpful advice.
You might want to take the stairs to the left.
Loki may not have realized it at the time, but his casual suggestion would trigger a chain of events that would lead to his lifelong regret. As Curse successfully infiltrated Asgard, Malekith's revenge plan entered its final stage. The Dark Elves fleet, taking advantage of their ship's cloaking technology, quietly reached the skies over Asgard, preparing to launch their attack. Though Heimdall spotted them in time and destroyed some of the enemy vessels, he couldn't hold back the overwhelming assault. The blade-like ships sliced through the sky like the scythes of death, heading straight for the city. Using superior piloting skills and tactical precision, the Dark Elves deftly maneuvered their ships through Asgard's defenses, avoiding its anti-aircraft fire, easily destroying the turrets, and overpowering Asgard's outdated fleet. Sensing the dire situation, Heimdall swiftly activated the palace's protective shield, keeping the enemies at bay. But just at that moment, Curse found a weakness in the barrier. With his immense strength, he punched through the protective shield, leading the Dark Elves' army into the palace hall. Faced with the overwhelming tide of enemies, the Einherjar warriors fought valiantly, but they were no match for the terrifying power of the darkness. The throne, a symbol of royal authority, was destroyed in the chaos by Malekith with a void grenade, and he proceeded to search for the Aether. Odin and Thor arrived too late. As they looked upon the bodies strewn across the hall, they realized that the Dark Elves had risen again. There was no time to mourn the fallen warriors. They had to act quickly to protect the Aether from falling into enemy hands. Meanwhile, Jane and Queen Frigga were hiding in the royal chambers. As Malekith stormed in, the queen revealed her pride and strength as a sorceress. She skillfully fought the enemy with her exceptional swordsmanship. But in the end, Frigga was mortally wounded by a sneak attack from Curse. The enemy had intended to use Frigga to force Jane to hand over the Aether.
You have taken something, child. Give it back.
But they were deceived. It was only an illusion created by Frigga. In protecting the Aether, Frigga had paid with her life. Seeing all of this, Thor was consumed by rage. Malekith was severely injured by Thor's sudden attack, and Curse quickly withdrew with him. Determined to avenge his mother, Thor wanted to take the Aether to the Dark World, hoping to lure Malekith out, but Odin stopped him. They couldn't bear the consequences of that terrifying weapon falling into the hands of the Dark Elves. As long as Jane remained in Asgard, Malekith would inevitably take the bait, even if it meant sacrificing the last of the Einherjar. Odin swore to keep the Aether on Asgard. However, Odin's resolute stance did nothing to sway Thor's determination for revenge, but at that moment, they had more pressing matters to deal with. The people of Asgard held a solemn memorial for the warriors who had fallen in the war. Countless brave souls who had defended their homeland ascended to Valhalla, becoming the brightest stars in the night sky, continuing to protect the land they loved. Every face was marked with endless sorrow, but none more than Loki, who was imprisoned in his dark cell. He had never imagined that an offhand remark of his would lead to his mother's tragic death. Looking back on his life, Loki realized the only person he had truly loved was his mother. Revenge for her had now become his sole obsession, and Thor's arrival seemed to offer him a glimmer of hope. Odin firmly opposed Thor's plan for vengeance. He ordered Jane's imprisonment and sealed off the Bifrost Bridge, cutting off all access to the outside world. If Thor wanted to travel to the distant dark planet, his only option was to turn to Loki. Only through Loki's secret passage can they hope to escape unnoticed. But before they could act, they needed a thorough plan and careful preparation. The first step was for Sif to knock out the guards and rescue Jane from her house arrest, handing her over to Thor. At the same time, Heimdall would work to distract Odin, drawing him away from the palace at a crucial moment. Meanwhile, the Berserkers would hold off the pursuing forces. They fled Asgard in the ship left behind by the Dark Elves. The plan seemed flawless, but they had overlooked one key issue. None of them knew how to fly the ship. Inside the ship, Thor and Loki were filled with anxiety, while outside, the Berserkers were already exhausted. Just at the critical moment, Thor, using his remarkable intelligence, successfully started the ship. It shot out of the palace like an arrow, dodging heavy fire, but not before accidentally slicing through a statue of Thor's grandfather. Loki felt completely hopeless about the escape plan, while Thor, having had enough of Loki's endless complaints, shoved him out of the ship. Thor then picked up his beloved and jumped into the pre-prepared airship. This was the final step of their plan. The airship slipped through Loki's secret passage, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at the dark planet. Sensing the arrival of the Aether, Malekith, still recovering on the dark planet, led his forces OU, but the scene before him left him puzzled.
You still don't trust me, brother? Would you?
He had expected Thor and Loki to come seeking revenge, but he did not expect Loki to choose to betray. Loki, striking and kicking, dragged Thor before Malekith, even going so far as to sever Thor's arm, before offering Jane up to Malekith. Loki's sole motivation for this was to witness the destruction of Asgard with his own eyes. Faced with this seemingly madman, Malekith was cautious, not willing to trust his words too quickly. Luckily, Curse had seen Loki in the prison before and confirmed that he was acting in good faith, finally putting Malekith's doubts to rest. With Thor apparently stripped of his ability to fight, Malekith lifted Jane into the air, and the ether began to flow slowly out from her eyes, nose, and mouth until it was fully extracted from her body. This was exactly the trap Thor had planned. Everything up until this point had been an illusion crafted by Loki's magic, designed to strike at the critical moment when Malekith was absorbing the ether. With Mjolnir in hand, Thor immediately launched a deadly attack on the ether, fully aware that if he could destroy it, both his home and the universe would be saved. The thunderous power of his strike caused a massive explosion, and the ether was shattered into pieces. But in the very next moment, the ether miraculously reformed itself and was absorbed into Malekith's body. Having obtained the ether, Malekith had no intention of continuing the fight. He knew that compared to recreating the universe, the lives of Thor and his allies were insignificant. Leaving a few soldiers to deal with them, he made his escape. Curse casually tossed a void grenade, and Loki, quick on his feet, pushed Jane out of the way. However, he couldn't dodge in time and was nearly pulled into the black hole. Fortunately, Thor arrived just in time to save him. Thor watched helplessly as Malekith was about to escape. Enraged, he swung Mjolnir and charged forward, only to be swatted away effortlessly by Curse. Though Thor was one of the gods, in terms of both weaponry and strength, he was completely overpowered by Curse. Even his prized Mjolnir could do nothing to harm Curse, and Thor was left pinned to the ground, being brutally beaten, with no chance to fight back. In this dire moment, Loki stepped in and launched a surprise attack on Curse. Though the damage was minimal, it gave Thor a precious window of time. Seizing the moment, Loki activated the void grenade hanging at his waist. The powerful spatial force twisted Curse's body, annihilating him completely. Loki had finally avenged his mother, redeeming himself, but at the cost of his own life. Loki quietly closed his eyes in Thor's arms, and no matter how much Thor roared in anguish, he couldn't wake his brother. Thor was filled with overwhelming regret. He knew it was his own foolish plan that had led to his brother's sacrifice. At the same time, he realized that the entire universe was now on the brink of disaster. Malekith, piloting his ship, was heading straight for Earth. Malekith's plan was to release the Aether on Earth, plunging the universe back into an age of darkness, and the only person who could stop him, Thor, was still trapped on the dark planet. Thor initially thought of finding a secluded cave to live out his remaining days with Jane, but to his surprise, the cave they were in was connected to the hidden warehouse on Earth. This allowed them to return to Earth and quickly head to Jane's home. There Thor meets the scientist Eric. As the first person on Earth to detect the impending connection of the 9 realms, Eric had already designed a weapon to counter it. The group immediately set off for the Greenwich site to stop Malekith's plot. At Greenwich, Darcy nervously installed the equipment, while Thor took on the task of holding off Malekith. Meanwhile, Jane and Eric were in charge of operating the weapon. With a gentle turn of the knob, the enemy instantly disappeared from the spot. Jane's inexperience with the equipment caused some of her colleagues and a few dark elves to be teleported together, but compared to them, Thor's situation was exceedingly difficult. Malekith, already powerful, was now enhanced by the Aether, forcing Thor to retreat again and again. Thor finally managed to slide in close to Malekith, only for Jane to teleport him away. As the connection of the 9 realms began in the sky, Thor had no choice but to forcibly remove Malekith from Earth, temporarily delaying his plan. However, the unstable portals caused them to be teleported between different worlds. They fought from Earth to the Dark Planet, from the Dark Planet to Jotunheim, even bringing back a frost giant that happened to save Darcy from the pursuing Dark Elves. The busiest of all was Mjolnir. Even with its cosmic-level navigation, it couldn't keep up with Thor's speed as he teleported between worlds. Amid the chaos, Thor was teleported to a subway station. Without Mjolnir, he had no choice but to obediently take the subway back to the battlefield. Meanwhile, freed from Thor, Malekith finally had time to initiate his Dark Universe plan. He unleashed a massive amount of Aether, which flowed through the connections between the 9 realms. Darkness followed wherever the Aether touched, and by the time Thor arrived back at the scene, he was powerless to stop it. Fortunately, Eric and Jane arrived just in time with the spatial conversion device. However, as mere mortals, they couldn't get close to Malekith. Thor had to enter the Aether alone with the device. As soon as Thor stepped into the Aether, he slashed Malekith with a sword, and with Jane's help, they instantly disabled one of Malekith's arms. With another attack, Thor sent Malekith's left arm to the Dark Planet, but even with Malekith wounded, as long as he remained within the formation, there was no stopping the rampaging Aether. Luckily, Mjolnir finally caught up. Thor struck Malekith with a powerful blow, knocking him out of the Aether. Jane seized the moment and successfully teleported Malekith back to the Dark Planet. Thor, having survived the Aether, collapsed from exhaustion. Meanwhile, Malekith's massive ship, out of control, was plummeting straight toward Thor. Despite Jane's best efforts, she couldn't pull Thor out of danger, so she used her own body to shield him instead. The experiences along the way had deepened their feelings for each other. Though they couldn't live together, they were willing to face death together. In the nick of time, Eric stepped in and teleported the ship to the Dark Planet. The unlucky Malekith had just been teleported back, only to look up and see the mothership crashing straight toward him, sealing his fate. Afterward, Thor returned to Asgard to face Odin and ask for forgiveness. Odin praised Thor's heroism and was prepared to pass the throne to him, but Thor refused.
I'd rather be a good man than a great king.
Is this my son I hear, or the woman he loves?
When you speak to, I never hear Mother's voice. This is not for Jane, Father. She does not know what I came here to say.
One son who wanted the throne too much, another who will not take it. Is this my legacy?
Loki died with honor. I shall try to live the same. Is that not legacy enough?
Odin was moved by Thor's deep emotions and respected his decision. With his father's blessing, Thor turned and left Asgard, returning to Earth to live a happy life with Jane. Little did Thor know, the Odin he spoke to was actually Loki in disguise. So where is the real Odin? And what thrilling stories await? Stay tuned, and I'll guide you through the Marvel Universe.